In the aftermath of the devastating earthquake in southern Turkey, Armenia sent search and rescue teams to earthquake-affected areas. Along with this, Armenian aid convoys crossed the long-closed land border into Turkey. So what's next for Armenia-Turkey normalization? I'm joined today by Richard Giragosian, the director of the Regional Studies Center, to discuss this. So Richard Giragosian, thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
First off, you had a recent visit to Turkey with Dr. Iskandarian. You had meetings with people from the media, from academia, from political circles. Can you first explain to our watchers what was the purpose of the visit? Was it productive? And what can you tell us generally about this visit?
Well, it was both productive and interesting. We had a week-long visit first to the Turkish capital, Ankara, and then to Istanbul. The idea was a trip to gauge the situation pre-election, before the coming presidential and parliamentary elections. However, the timing accidentally was especially important because we had the trip planned well before the devastating earthquake. Yet we followed a week after the unexpected visit of Armenian Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan and the Armenian dispatch of both humanitarian aid shipments through an opened border, as well as the deployment of an expert rescue team from Armenia. This earthquake diplomacy was as important to understand in Turkey as the pre-election situation demanded as well.
Okay, and as the people you spoke to, but your own opinions on Turkish political circles and society, how do you think that was perceived in Turkey, that historic move by Armenia to send these rescue teams, aid, etc.?
Well, in one context, it was no surprise that in such earthquake diplomacy, Armenia's rapid reaction, gesture of goodwill, a sincere response to a tragedy, was well received and welcomed. However, what was interesting to me was it wasn't the humanitarian aid that was so impressive for the Turkish audience. Rather, it was the Armenian rescue team that actually saved lives on the ground. And in that context, the media coverage in Turkey was amazingly positive and extensive. This actually helps for the Turkish domestic audience to no longer fear or oppose Armenia and normalizing relations with Armenia. Nevertheless, it is a very tense political situation leading up to elections. And I must say, Armenia remains much more democratic and much more stable than all of its neighbors, including Turkey.
And I want to ask about the 2023 Turkish general elections. As you mentioned, they will elect both a president and a parliament. It could be that one party wins the presidency, another one wins the parliament. But I want to pose some scenarios to you and see what you think about what this outcome may mean for Armenia-Turkey normalization. Of course, we do not know what the outcome of the election will be, but let's say, for example, that President Erdogan and his AKP party wins again in 2023. What do you think that would mean for Armenia-Turkey normalization?
Well, first of all, from a narrow focus of just Armenia-Turkey, the Armenian side has been hedging its bets. In other words, the Armenian government has been officially negotiating with the Turkish government, naturally. Ruben Rubinyan and Serdar Kilic in terms of special envoys. But Armenia also has deep connections and contact with the major opposition party of Turkey, the CHP, as well as the very prominent and impressive Armenian member of the Turkish parliament, Garo Palyan, representing a seat from the Kurdish HDP party. In this context, for Armenia and normalization, it really matters less who wins and how. And in this context, we still have the upper hand from an Armenian perspective.
Okay, but there is a possibility as well. Several opinion polls are suggesting that the CHP could lead a coalition that could come to power and oust Erdogan from office. As you mentioned, the HDP, there is a possibility that the HDP could even be involved in some sort of coalition, but we do not really know what could happen once the election results are announced. What do you think about the possibility of a CHP-led government coming to power in Turkey. There are those, for example, that would say that the West would have more leverage over Turkey and that could impact Armenia-Turkey normalization. Should we be worried about the CHP coming to power in Turkey, or should we see that as an opportunity for new impetus?
Given what's been happening in Turkey, I would argue we should worry about everything that's changing in Turkey. But in a basic sense, what we have is Erdogan and his AK party is Islamist in orientation, authoritarian in its governance. The CHP is the Kemalist opposition. And in many ways, it's less nationalist, but statist. In other words, a very strong state, which, regarding its ties to the military, for example, does not make it inherently friendlier to Armenia. Nevertheless, there is an accidental advantage here. The deputy leader of the CHP is former Ambassador Unal Chevikos, former ambassador to London and Baku, yet he's been to Armenia several times. He is most likely to become a foreign minister if the CHP wins the election. And having been to Armenia, knowing us, knowing the issue, there is an opening and an opportunity there.
Okay. I also want to ask, there is this idea of a triangular or trilateral relationship between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. This attitude of to what extent does Azerbaijan want to or can impede the Armenia-Turkey normalization process? There are those, however, say that Baku is changing its tune in this regard. What do you think about how Baku perceives the current developments with regards to Armenia-Turkey normalization?
I can't help but to be skeptical, for the simple reason from Azerbaijan's attack against Armenia, to its incursion militarily into Armenian territory, to the siege of Nagorno-Karabakh. Azerbaijan in no way represents a positive contribution to regional security and stability. Having said that, it's the Turkish perspective that's changed, not Azerbaijan. Turkey seems much more intent on playing its own role in determining foreign policy options in the region, including normalization. Azerbaijan seems less powerful and much less the obstacle. But I do think both Azerbaijan and Russia are allowing this process to proceed and to see where it goes. And there is a chance for, let's say, successful, effective normalization by the end of the year. But the challenge is much more on one party, Turkey, not Armenia and not on Azerbaijan, to deliver, to meet expectations. What we also see, however, is the Armenian government has made a strategic mistake, in my opinion. Turkey, in recent months, has altered the policy. In other words, Armenia-Turkey normalization since the former government has always been a policy of no preconditions.
Right.
However, in recent months, Turkey has demanded and introduced a new precondition, requiring Armenia and Azerbaijan to sign a peace treaty prior to normalization. The Armenian government should have opposed it strongly, especially as a policy of no preconditions has been the only consistent policy in Armenian foreign policy from Sargsyan to Pashinyan. And Armenia's failure to challenge that has allowed Turkey to get away with imposing a new demand or prerequisite. And I think it's a mistake, but it also enhances the power of Azerbaijan in this process.
And in reality, do you not think that perhaps Armenia-Turkey normalization could have made the Armenia-Azerbaijan peace process more productive and more conducive? There's this almost chicken before the egg attitude when it comes to the two processes. So wouldn't have Armenia-Turkey normalization made the process of peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan more productive?
Well, that's a good analogy, because what we see, Armenia is facing a twin track of diplomacy. Armenia-Turkey, and indirectly related, not directly, but indirectly, the synergy between Armenia and Azerbaijan. These two tracks are very different, but parallel. Neither track moves at the same time as the other. and both help the other. In other words, progress on Armenia-Turkey helps Armenia-Azerbaijan. What's interesting is, from an Armenian strategic point of view, normalization is important also to exploit and enhance a widening division between Turkey and Azerbaijan. Their interests are not aligned 100%. And Turkey has been excluded from regional trade and transport by Russia. Turkey comes out of the war of 2020 with much less than it expected. Azerbaijan, as the little brother of the relationship, angers and frustrates many in the Turkish government for having inordinate power over bigger Turkey. This is where we can drive a wedge between this relationship. Strategically, that's important. But yes, progress on both tracks helps provide positive synergy to the other diplomatic front.
It's interesting that in Turkey they spoke a lot about how Azerbaijan also has leverage over Turkey, not just politically, but economically, socially. Can you speak a bit to that? I think many people underestimate that influence.
Well, what's interesting is the real reason that football diplomacy under former President Serge Sargsyan failed was little to do with the protocols and much more to do with Azerbaijan's belated sabotage of the process. Turkey then and now will not and perhaps cannot do anything to undermine its relationship with Azerbaijan. But it's Frankenstein. Turkey's created a monster in Baku in terms of Azerbaijan now serving as the largest foreign direct investor in Turkey, largely, of course, by energy, also buying up newspapers, influencing the media. Azerbaijan, in many ways, undermines Turkish options in the region. And in this context, I do think that tension behind the scenes is now escalating. Therefore, in Turkey, many in the government, as well as expert circles, are growing increasingly frustrated with Azerbaijan in terms of its undue power and influence within Turkey.
Okay, and finally, I just want to ask briefly, what's next in your opinion? Whose court is the ball in? What do you expect to see in the coming months?
Well, if we look in the wake of the devastating earthquake, Armenia took a unilateral gesture of goodwill, delivering humanitarian aid, forcing Turkey to at least temporarily open the border. We also have the moral high ground here. I think the burden is completely limited to on Turkey alone in terms of meeting expectations, both internationally, European and American, but also delivering on promises to Armenia. In this context as well, failure to deliver normalization is a problem for Turkey, not necessarily Armenia. Having said that, what we expect going forward is a return to diplomatic negotiations between Rubinyan and Kilic, but we do expect perhaps an opportunity to come in the wake of the election, where in my opinion it's more likely that incumbent President Erdogan will win a very small majority, but a victory, and lose control of the parliament. A weaker, less stable Turkey is more in need of normalization.
Okay, insightful as always, Richard Giragosian. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.